Morning, very nearly afternoon, everyone. How are you today? I hope you're well. Oh my goodness. So I've had a stupid busy morning. I was really hoping to be in the garden by 9 today. Didn't happen. It's nearly noon. Never mind. Also, today was supposed to be overcast, which would have been perfect, but the sun's just come out. It's blazing and I'm feeling overdressed. Never mind. It's beautiful. It's just so beautiful here at the moment. We had a little tiny bit of rain yesterday. It was only light, very light. I know this because I was working from home all day. I had the tennis on, listening to the tennis, and there was suddenly a massive rainstorm in Paris, which obviously stopped play for the best part of an hour. So I took the opportunity to quickly run down here, A, because I had the last of my peppers to bring down, and B, because I needed to water. Yes, I know it's raining, but water the bits and pieces in the cold frame. When I got here, oh my goodness, not slugs, snail fest. There were snails everywhere. So I spent about 20 minutes and I must have picked off about 50 or more snails. It's kind of like King Canute with the tide though, isn't it? Because I know that pretty much for every snail I picked off, there were probably 40 or 50 more in next door's undergrowth just waiting to come out and feast on the smorgasbord of my plot. But I've come down today, and what's great is all those really tender little squash I planted the other day, they're all fine, apart from the one that already had a bit of a nibble. Bye bye Rusty. So it's looking a little bit sad. I'm not going to do anything about it for now though, just leave it. It might perk up, but that's why I've got my backups for just such a thing. But it's great that I haven't looked really closely, but I think that was my only loss in the last couple of days. But the other great thing I've noticed this morning coming down, coming on site, so we had that rain yesterday, looking at the site today compared with when I was here at, I think it was about 4:30, 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. It's lovely to see all the soil getting a nice bit of wet to it. This morning it all looks bone dry again, except where all my climbing beans are. If you remember, way back in the winter, I dug those trenches and I filled them with all sorts of garden material, all sorts of organic rubbish, bit of compost, cardboard, all sorts of things, in the hopes that that would help to retain moisture. And I think it's jolly well worked, because looking at the rest of the garden, where you can just see from the colour, everything else is looking quite dry, but those little sections where the beans are, I can see they're still really quite wet. So yay, hopefully that's worked in terms of the moisture retention. Yay! Now, oh my goodness, it's quite unusual today. I've come down and there are loads of plotters here today, which is quite unusual for a weekday, or at least there are the usuals I see on the weekdays. They're mostly either retired folk or sort of mums after they've dropped the kids at school. They come down and, do a couple of hours or so. But loads of folk around, because it looks like everyone's in pretty much the same boat as me, that everyone's a little bit behind with planting. So it's just a sight full of people today desperately trying to get their plants in the ground, because not only do we need to get them in the ground, but also finally this weekend we're due some good rain. So I'm going to push on in the next couple of days to do all my plantings and sowings and everything I possibly can ahead of that rain, so that they can all have a gorgeous soaking. So loads to get done today. I don't know how far I'll get, but I'll give it a good crack. But just before we go into the garden, I wanted to say thank you to Renee for this card. I've had a few cards from her over the last couple of years, and she always makes these beautiful homemade cards. Isn't that gorgeous. Where's it going to go on the pin board? I have to take someone else down. But in with it. Oh, sorry, Poppy. She sent me a lovely packet of calendula, which is great because some of the calendula I sowed in the cathedral bed, either side, if you remember, of my salads, they're a no-show. So I can have a little re-sow today, because the first thing I'm going to concentrate on this afternoon, keep forgetting how time's flown, the first thing I want to concentrate on today is getting that cathedral bed planted and sown. And a couple of other little bits too. The other thing, I've dragged it out so I don't forget. Oh, I don't want to tip them out. Can you see? I keep old cotton reels. Sadly these days they're horrible plastic. They're not the lovely wooden ones that I remember from my tiny childhood. But yeah, I've got these out to remind me today to start putting them on the tops of canes, because I know a few of you from the last video were a bit concerned about my eye health. So yeah, I've got my little cane toppers, they'll go on. And occasionally, can you see right in the end of there? The hole is a little bit too big and it would just slip down the cane. So I keep from Friends. Do you see what that is? It's the wrapper from Baby Bell cheese. It's wax. So I just get a little bit of that off, bung it in the hole to bung the hole up. Boom, cane topper. Right, Poppy, are you ready to do some work? I think she's ready to crawl over whatever I'm doing. So, first job of the day is to get the climbing squash planted and tied into their frames, and then undersow all those areas with more salads. I'm going to have a seed rummage in a minute. Hopefully I'll get all that done, and then there's a couple of other jobs smaller jobs I'd like to do today, but I'll come to that if I come to it. Then tomorrow, I'm trying to think what needs doing. Yes. So tomorrow will be the day for building my cucumber frame, planting all the cucumbers, and in front of them to plant all the peppers. A couple of people actually were asking about temperatures here at the moment for timing of planting things out. So roughly speaking, our daytime temperatures at the moment are ranging from about 16 centigrade up to about 23. It's perfectly normal for this time of year, but the important temperatures are the night time, and at the moment they're hovering between about 10 and 12 degrees, and I know because I looked it up to tell someone that 10 is 50 Fahrenheit, and that's kind of, I mean, I would go a little bit lower, I'd go to 8, but 10 is where I want to be for all those things like the peppers, cute squash, tomatoes, all those more tender things. So it's absolutely fine to get them out now. It would have been fine to get them out 2 weeks ago. But yes, if you're growing peppers and tomatoes outdoors like I am, as long as it's above 10 at night, you should be absolutely fine. Having said that, bye Poppy. They don't all make a thud when they jump down, don't they? Yes, having said that, all the peppers I grow are specifically outdoor peppers. They don't need a greenhouse. So just check with if you've got, seed packets rather than donated seeds, whatever. Have a look at the packets and make sure they're okay to be outside, because I know some of them are even more tender and need to be in a greenhouse. Yay! Shall we get stuck in? Come on, let's get planting. Oh, we have another gusty day on our hands. So just before I start in the cathedral bed, I thought I'd show you what I meant about the bean trenches. So either side of this path, you can probably see from that, well, I hope you can, even though it's rather bright, you can see just how moist that still is compared with, say, the soil next door. So obviously all of this got rained on yesterday, but all of that soil is dry. Bean trenches, good and moist still. Yay! I just also want to show you what happens to my soil when it's so hot and so dry for so long. Just coming around the outside of the broad beans. Now, let me see if I can show you down here. You see the size of that crack already? Can't get my fingers in it. All the way along here. You see? Let me just, I don't know if you can see, but just a huge crack still. I mean, it's only just the beginning of summer, and that's what I've got already. So this just shows how, you know, clay soil undoubtedly is a tricky soil to work with. And the only way to deal with this is to just keep adding organic matter whenever possible. Keep adding the organic matter, keep mulching, and then eventually we get there, or at least we get something that's slightly more manageable. Now, what's going on in here this morning? Are you finding a bit of shade, Missy? Well, you're very welcome to the shade, but please don't eat any of my beans because I'm going to harvest those all in a couple of days. What are you going to do for shade then? Miss Poppy? Okay, let's get to work. I feel like it's taking me forever to start each session at the moment, just because I'm grabbing so much clobber from the shed, plants in the cold frame. But I think I've got everything I need now, including a bit of a damp bottom. Never mind, the space is getting tight. Okay, finally, let's get some vertical squash in. So here I'm going to plant the Sucrine du Berry, and where should I put it? Where? I think I want it to go that way. So I've just given the surface a bit of a damping. I've given it sort of like 20 minutes or so to soak in. That's actually for the repeat lettuce sowing, not for the squash, because with the squash I will basically give them the water once they're in via their bottles. Have I got my bottles to hand too? Yes, everything to hand today, including opla. Definitely lacking in space. So exactly as I did with the horizontal ones, a good dollop of compost that's got a bit of chicken manure in it. Where shall I put your bottle? Where to put it? So when I'm putting the bottles in, I'm trying to think about which angle I'm coming at to water them in the summer, and I think I'll probably be on the path here to do it. So I haven't got any sticks to hand, so I'm just gonna, oh no, I need to get it fairly deep because otherwise the foxes will have it out in no time. So bottle in. Ooh. This weather's been so weird because it has felt for days now like we're whipping up to a big storm, the skies suddenly go dark, and then nothing happens. Okay, let's get this little one in. These are a bit dry, but like I say, I'll give them all a really, really good soak once everything's in. I'll go around again. They look so tiddly at this stage, don't they? Let's get some string to it, partly to stop it flapping around in the breeze, exactly as I did with the horizontal ones, but also to introduce it to where it's going to be climbing. So with the string I'm going to just, it's a bit awkward this angle. I'm actually going to tie it to the post and then loop it around the squash so I can get it good and firm on the teepee, and then a bit more gently around the actual squash. Oh, I've used way too much string there. I'll trim that off and apply it to something else. Yeah, save that. Save it, use it later. So yeah, so I'm aiming for 3 plants per teepee. However, I've come to my Violina this morning. Yes, slugs have had it, or snails, one or the other. So I've only got 2 Violina. What I'm thinking, also because the delicata have been rubbish as well, it looks like one of my teepees is actually going to be spare, completely empty. So I'm thinking one of a couple of things. I sowed a load of backup cucumbers, so I could put some cucumbers on there. Or if my backup squash develop, they're still really tiny, put something over there. And then I was actually thinking, if worse comes to worse, I could use one of those teepees for a couple of loofah. So where they've got going on the back of the deck, that's their, I was talking about this the other day, they're not going to come to maturity in terms of giving me a loofah that I can use as a sponge, but they may develop fruits that I can eat immature. And the ones that I got going at home that have now been growing February, March, April, May, 4 months or so, I could put those on the teepee and hope that they are the ones that come to maturity for me to use as a sponge. So if you're in a similar situation, you know, I think we generally all oversow in case of poor germination, slug attack, what have you. Don't despair. You know, just don't sort of stick rigidly to your original plan. If, like me, you find that you've got a spare teepee, just stick something else in there. Stick anything. Something is better than nothing, isn't it? Right, let's get the rest of these in, and then I can undersow it with my spare salad leaves. It feels really humid today. Oh, if we get this rain that we're forecast, it'll make such a difference. It'll make a difference to getting things going, but of course it will also mean that we have a slug and snail fest and weeds popping up. It's funny, this year I'm, apart from being behind, I'll stop saying that, but yeah, it's weird. I've got just scrabbling around for some more of the Rubens Red to underplant here. Yeah, it's definitely been an odd year. If that rain comes, it really will help things get going. The weeds will also get going. But as I was just saying before I interrupted my own thought about the seeds, this year, I think, for the first time ever, I mean, the weeds aren't too bad, certainly in terms of, you know, perennial stuff, because over the years I've dug them out by the roots, but I am noticing a few weeds coming up here and there. I simply haven't bothered doing anything about them at the moment, because obviously the priority is to get the seeds in, to get the plants in. But it's weird. I'm trying to not let them annoy me as I walk past the beds and I see a weed. It's like, just, Vivi, ignore it. It doesn't matter. It can wait. You've got more pressing matters. So it'll be great in, I don't know, a week or so, when the whole garden is planted, seeded, what have you. I can then have a lovely session down here, just thoroughly weeding everywhere. I actually don't mind having a weeding session. I find it quite relaxing. Does that sound odd? I'm sure some of you must have that too. Just that lovely kind of quiet, especially I'm just sitting down, I'm fairly comfortable. You sort of zone in on one small patch of your soil. I think also when it comes to weeding like that, it's a really good opportunity. You're up close with your soil. I think the more intimate we are with our soil, the better, in terms of knowing it and observing it over the years. So we can, we're always thinking about how we can improve it, what it might need. But the other thing about being up close and personal with your soil is getting up close and personal with all the insects in it. One of the things I enjoy on the warm evenings when I come down here to water, and you can sort of almost feel the heat of the day coming off the soil, as I'm watering, all the wee little spiders are scurrying about, getting out of the way of my water. So many different spiders. I have absolutely no idea about spider varieties, not varieties, what do you call it, species, all the different species. I have absolutely no idea, but I just really enjoy seeing them. I just enjoy all the insect life that's in the garden. I think quite often when we think about wildlife, we think about the bigger things, the foxes, the badgers, the deer, the stoats and the pine martens, if you're lucky enough to see those, the birds, what have you. Of course, I think we're often thinking about the bees, but there's so much other life going on in our gardens. It's wonderful. And I always feel like the more life I'm seeing in the garden, the better a job I'm doing about looking after it. Because I definitely feel that. With the garden. I'm just the custodian. It's not mine. Well, it kind of is. You know what I mean? It's my little space to play in and grow in. But ultimately, it belongs to the whole universe, doesn't it? It belongs to all the little critters who use it, even the slugs and the snails. Oh, it's Philosophy 101 today, isn't it? I think that's one of the other lovely things about doing a quiet job, like sitting down and doing some gentle seeding. It is a lovely opportunity to just reflect on how much we enjoy our gardens and what we get from them. Once this is seeded and I start planting over there again, and I'm humping and lumping about my bucket of compost, I won't be philosophising then. I'll probably be looking at the clock and thinking, get on with it, Vivi, get on with it. So despite that bit of a soaking earlier, it's really dry. So although we are due that rain, at the end of today I'm going to give everything a really good water anyway, because firstly I don't trust the weather forecast. It's been wrong a lot recently. And secondly, well, if I get it a bit wet now, it'll help it just take that rain in when the rain does come. Yay! One little teepee done. I think all the warmth over the last few days has made the rose bush go mad. Absolutely bursting with blooms. Oh, it's so lovely. I do enjoy it. Just when you think you're done with all your seeding, it's time to start reseeding. Keeps us on our toes, doesn't it? So, with all my direct sown beans that I sowed about 2 weeks ago now, there may, in some instances, just be a case of lack of germination. However, with a lot of them, I know they've germinated because I can see their stalks and where they've been nibbled off. So I'm just going to take an opportunity today while, you know, the ground is really nice and warm and moist, as I showed you earlier, and I'm just going to reseed. Now, sorry, excuse me, if for any of my drying beans I was reseeding now, I'd be getting a little bit worried about the length of season, because we want them to obviously grow, get their pods. We want the beans to plump up in the pods, and then ideally I like to leave my pods on the vines to do their drying. Then I harvest. I usually give them a little bit more of a dry at home by way of spreading them all out on trays in a sunny window. So the pattern for me over the years has been that, by about mid to the end of October, that's when I start to take down my beans for drying, and by then they're quite rattly in their pods. The only problem with that is obviously if we get some late, not late, my head's all over the place today, if we get some early rains. In other words, if we start to be having a really wet end of the summer, so if sort of August, September we're really wet, the chances are if I leave them on the vines to dry, they'll just rot. If that's the case, that has happened before, all I do simply is I take them down, take the pods off the vines, put them in my shed on my onion drying rack, spread them out in there, and they can air dry. They can have a good dry in there for sort of a month or so, if not more. So yes, fear not if you haven't got any beans yet. You've just about got time still to sow some. And then the other thing is with the drying beans, if you're growing for drying and you're not going to get them to the drying stage because of the weather, whatever, they've come really late, you can always do them demi-sec in the freezer, like I do with my coco de Campol, like I do with, what else do I do it with? Oh, loads. The runner beans. So, yeah. Don't despair, anybody. I don't want anyone despairing. Not at this beautiful beginning of summer. This should be a time of being hopeful and excited. I say that, you wait till the camera's off, I'll be crying into my cup of tea later going, I've got no plants. You know what, we'll be grateful for whatever we get, and we'll just keep being optimistic, eh? It's the only way to be. Now, because I have had so many nibbles, I have got a few backups on the deck of most of my beans. But I just thought, actually, especially with these ones I'm experimenting with this year, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I'm putting 3 per pole now, in the hopes that, let's say 2 germinate and 1 gets nibbled, so I'm left with 1 plant, and then I've got 1 from the deck to bring in. So hopefully, by the end of the summer, I will have the 96 pole beans. Pole beans, look at me, I'm going all American. The 96 climbing beans that I planned for way back at the beginning of the year, when it was cold and dark and dreary in January. Remember that? When we were all stuck indoors, thinking that, we'd never get back in the garden. It seemed so far away. It seems like a million years ago, doesn't it? And yet here we are now in our garden, panicking because we're behind. Not panicking, you know what I mean. No panic about anything. So yeah, it's I'll give you a little show and tell in the cathedral bed in a second, because that is all now planted, seeded. Fingers crossed. It's surprising actually how just even in these last few weeks how much my ground has started to compact again, because it's been baking in the sun, and that's that's one of the reasons I was saying about why I've wanted to, excuse me, seed the whole lot again now, rather than do a second or third, should I say, sowing in July. Literally every day that my soil is bare, I'm just doing it a disservice. I'm doing myself a disservice. So the sooner everything can get growing and cover, I want to see all this soil disappear, as in not be visible to my eye, not disappear as in I lose my garden. But yeah, it's interesting actually. Over the years, my attitude has really massively changed about the soil and how I work with it and hopefully try to help it. I mean, I've always tried to add compost. Of course, it's kind of basic gardening, isn't it, that we add as much compost as we can. But I remember when I first started down here a few years ago, I would till the beds really, really, really fine. And actually with clay soil, I think one of the worst things you can do is till it fine, riddle it, all of that, because all you end up with is this kind of clay dust on the top of the beds. And the minute it rains, you've basically made yourself a nice ceramic slab on the top of your soil. But yeah, I used to love the sight of my freshly tilled beds, my rows of veggies. You know, I was meticulous about plucking all my weeds out. I loved to see that beautiful brown soil. And yes, although on first appearances it looks neat and etc., etc., it's the worst thing I could have done for my soil is to leave it bare. It blows away in the wind, it gets washed away with rain. It's just an opportunity for weeds to come, the moisture is continually evaporating. No good whatsoever. So I've definitely over the years learned how better to manage this soil. It's getting better. It's still, as you've all seen, it's still heavy clay. But with that kind of covering in the winter, if nothing else, just with the cardboard, to stop it being pelted by the rain. And it keeps it nice and moist underneath. The worms love it. So yeah, I will, over these next few weeks, I will, of course, as always, be looking for materials to mulch with. And as everything comes up, so for instance with the rocking corn and the chickpeas, once they're up and I know where they're up, boom, they're going to get mulched. So, right, I need to do a bit of watering. And I'll show you how the cathedral bed is looking and what I ended up doing with that empty teepee. Well, this is another pleasing job to get done today. So, all the teepees are now planted with their various squash, and all of the underplanting of the salads is done. This is what I'm really excited about though. This first teepee, I've gone with the loofah. So, oops, that's my smallest one. But have a little look at this one. Yay! It's had to have 2 pieces of string already. And that one over there is not looking too bad either. So these were started indoors in February, 4 months ago, gosh. And they've been down here for about 2-3 weeks hardening off. So I've got, obviously I started this bed with chard and beetroot. I got a little bit more chard in and then I ran out, so I've just put a load of, I think, little gem lettuce. The beetroot I have continued under this one. This teepee is for the delicata, and as you can see, I have but one lonely little delicata. It looks quite healthy though. I mean, they're all a little bit on the yellow side, and that's just a sign that they really needed to get into the ground and start going and looking for some nutrients. So just the one at the moment, but I think my backup sowings, it looks like there might be 2. If they don't come to anything, I will simply find something that did come to something and put it in instead. On this teepee, this is new to me this year. This is a variety called Burgess Butternut. they really needed to get in. Look, they're really quite long already, and they've put out a couple of flowers, but hopefully now that they're in, instead of putting out flowers, they'll concentrate on growing. I reckon they'll be all right. So I've chosen this for the teepee because if I remember correctly, it's a slightly smaller squash. I think, oh, I can't remember whether it's this one or this, because this is also new to me, but it's a sort of like a sort of small acorn. This variety is called Cream of the Crop. I've done all my labels today because I really don't want to forget what things are, and I can imagine in a few weeks as things start growing, I'm going to have no clue. So again, they're looking okay. They just look really like they needed to get out and get out in a hurry. I did have 4, but one of them got eaten in the cold frame, so I was left with those 3, but 3 is what I wanted, so woohoo. And if you remember when I first sowed these saladings, it was all spinach in here. Really rubbish germination in places, so I've continued the spinach in that patch, but I actually ran out of spinach seed. So in this end I'd forgotten, but I had some rocket seed, so this is now all underplanted with rocket. And then in final top bed are my remaining 2 violinas. Look, they look so tiddly. If any of you watched last year, you'll remember though that, well, when I put my squash out, they're always like this, always a bit tiddly. But the violina, oh, they become such huge plants, and I get a lovely 3 or 4 squash from each one. So I've only got 2, but I'm not too worried. If I get a spare of something, I will maybe put it on the end here, but those 2 alone, they should actually cover the teepee anyway. And then back to where we started this morning, or this noon, that's all the Sucrine du Berry in. Again, they're all looking rather tiddly and scrappy and a bit sorry for themselves, but I have high hopes. So I did the rest of that with the Rubens Red, as you saw. Rubens Red here, that's a continuation. Ran out of Rubens Red, but I forgot I'd ordered some, and I've now sown in this patch here some Drunken Woman. That's another lettuce, but very disappointingly there were so few seeds in the packet. It's shocking. I mean, normally with salad seeds you get sort of like 400 or 500 in a packet. I doubt that even had 100 in it. So I've just underplanted there, filled that in with, I can't remember now. it's another red. It's another that's sort of similar to the Rubens Red. Actually, now that these are actually starting to grow, oh, that's a nice sight, isn't it? And it may be, normally by way of thinning, I would thin it out and scoff it. But I think what I might do, because of this intermittent germination, I might try and thin them, but take their roots up at the same time, and then just basically transplant them. So, yes, everything seems so time consuming at the moment. Coming around my beans, coming around this way. Yeah, it all seems so time consuming at the moment. But it's getting there. The jobs are getting done gradually. Tomorrow I'm going to attack that bed. That's to have my cucumber frame built, and then I can plant the cucumbers and the peppers. There was another job I was going to do today. Oh, I don't know if I've got the energy to do it now. I was going to start under the rose bush. Oh, so gorgeous, isn't it, that rose? Look at it. But I was going to start a couple of my first rows of fennel. We'll see. I've got the rest of the watering to do, which may sound mad, but there are some patches which are quite dry, and that rain isn't due for a couple of days. And frankly, I don't know whether it will come or not. So yeah, get the watering done, and then if I've got some energy, I may carry on and get a couple more beds sown. Yay! I think it's time for a little sit down in the shed. I don't think I'm going to do that fennel seeding today, but I have thought of a couple of other jobs I'd like to do, bearing in mind that hopefully we'll get that rain. Where I've got all the brassicas, especially the ones in the little cells, and actually more the ones that are pricked out in the pots and they're in trays, I want to move them out of the potato beds back to the cold frame, because of course I'm emptying the cold frame now because I'm planting. What I don't want is for those brassicas to be sitting in trays that get filled with water if we get the rain we're supposed to get. They're just going to get really, really sopping. But also, I want the rain to get down into the potato trenches so that they get a good soak too. Is that a good plan, Poppy? Yes, that sounds like a good plan. So I think I'm going to have a little bit of plant Tetris with the cold frame. What's left in there now? It's all the peppers, the 3 different types, all of the cukes I started at home, plus the backup cukes, the backup squash, and oh, shall I do that today? The achocha. So there's, I think, I can't remember, there's 3 or 4 achocha that I started at home that are, do you know what? I'll have a think about it. I'll get through the other bits and pieces I want to do, but I reckon it's about time for me to get the achocha in the ground as well. No, I'm going to leave that till tomorrow when I have my cucumber day, and I'll clear that whole side of the cold frame out. This is what it's like at this time of year, isn't it? Just when you think you've kind of finished the last of the planting jobs, you suddenly remember, oh, I've got to plant that, I've got to seed that. Isn't it great? I love it. So, okay, well for now, I'm going to get back out there and do those last few jobs, and one of my friends has just popped down, so hopefully we can have a little sit and a chat and just enjoy the quiet for a little while. So I'm going to say cheerio to all of you, and I will be seeing you again very soon because there's still so much to do. I can't wait in about maybe a week's time when I'm not saying there's still so much to do. I know we're all like this at the moment, aren't we? It's great. The list is getting a bit shorter and the garden is getting a bit greener. What more could we want? Brilliant. So, in the meantime, have fun in your gardens. Happy planting, happy sowing, whatever stage you're at. Make the most of it, enjoy it. Enjoy that lovely, quiet, close-up time with the soil. And take care of yourselves. Keep fit, keep well, keep at it. I will see you all really soon. In the meantime, cheerio!